It's really hard to tell a freshman student that the first year they enter into college or academia, it's very hard to tell them that all of this is a giant industry based around a hobby, that academia wasn't the same thing it was 50 years ago, or at least when it started. And capitalism, the economic system we live under, is isolated from academia. And in all due respect, academia is dependent upon capitalism. That academia is not this outside force that can counter capitalism. And so much of attending academia is whether you have the money or you don't, or you have the connections. And the job of academia is supposed to radically transform the student into an intellectual, into a paternal force to change society, to be a good person, and for the economic system to reward such behavior. In other words, white-collar work should be aimed for the intellectual, the enlightenment, and the paternal. Jobs for cartoonists, for artists, for the guardian class should have 80,000 to 100,000 a year, yet capitalism is outside of those paternal interests, and rather it's based upon a very ever-flowing supply and demand chain and social constructions, and becomes this robotic game upon us. So let me further elaborate. See, capitalism is all around us, and everything else is under it. That whatever your interests are, how people react, how homes are made, how we travel, it's all based upon transactions and money we get through profit, otherwise known as profit and command. And so there can be no sincerity under capitalism, because capitalism rewards people with the greatest amount of profit, of money, whether that's through a trust fund or a created job that gives that such social construction, money transactions. And so everything orbits capitalism. And because of this, it wasn't like there wasn't any, it's not like the mom and pop capitalism that existed 50 years ago. It's not like this fair capitalism that the family or the tribe shares it and shares their own currency. No, this is a cosmopolitan kind of robotic system we're under, this surveillance capitalism. And so with that, and we're just thrown into being under this capitalism, there can only be just existence. That no matter how hard we try to protest of such an unfair oligarchic system, we're met with a brick wall, and now what's left is our existence and our struggle between those who make profit, those who have, and those who have not. And money circulation is pretty much what turns kids into adults. And that's not happening anymore because there's no jobs. The system has crashed since COVID-19. And other factors that capitalism is in decline. Many intellects like Curvis Yarvin or Mulbug, Mark Fisher, Nick Land, even Paul Fussell when he talks about class, and Aaron Clarey, all talk about how capitalism is indeed the center, what we orbit, that affects every little cultural aspect. And, whether this is the dark enlightenment where we must return to a king and queen, or that Microsoft and Apple should be the new monarchy states, right? That these corporations who are in it for making profit are now unfairly the rulers of our desire-driven society, right? It's kind of goofy in a way, but, according to Nick Lamb, there's a singularity that's happening, that they want to throw people into this Philip K. Dick robot Borg, Star Trek board thing. But then you have to step back for a moment and realize all that is just science fiction, and that Paul Fussell and Eric Clarey, who are more kind of proponents of capitalism, who are sympathetic to capitalism, see it more as reality versus anti-reality. I would actually recommend reading Aaron Clarey's books first on the matter of being a normal guy and just being thrown into being and into existence, with capitalism being the invasive force all around us. His book Worthless targets academia as being a dependent hobby around capitalism and has declined recently so far because it's all about whether you have money or you don't, and it has no paybacks whatever degree you get into. They still say that if you do a STEM degree, science, technology, engineering, math, you'll make $100,000 a year. It's not true at all. That's a fad in itself. And you're seeing now all these useless colleges throughout the United States becoming, we will guarantee you a job. And jobs are now like unicorns. So Clary also puts on the realities of the world through Bachelor of Economics, where he talks everything from our sexuality, a man's violence, race realism, all that, and puts it in Bachelor of Economics, how you can save money, and as well just the thoughtful wisdom of enjoy the decline or accepting and living with the death of the United States. But I would like to get more into those who are subservient to the capitalist system and to the stubborn college professors who put this facade of intellectual paternalism and don't even tell you about Clary or Nick Land or anything like that. So we have to ask, what is professionalism? Professionalism is this kind of for the sake of making money, or at least trying to be the most supreme figure you can to represent some subject or some discipline of whatnot. It's based on the fake notion of meritocracy, that there's a hierarchy based upon skills, whatever that is. And I guess skills are innate, right? Well, college and trade schools try to brainwash you and tell you that a skill has to be learned. Like we're computer programs installing the skill of, underwater welding or something, or being a basketball player. That we go into liberal arts, and to be an English teacher, you need to do 4 years of reading David Foster Wallace and Proust. And that's not like it's some kind of, it's a hobby or it's required. It's almost as if Starbucks doesn't hire people unless they have any bachelor degree whatsoever. And that's the fraudulent notion of professionalism. Professionalism clearly doesn't understand what value is, because people make up value on the spot and on demand, and value is as fleeting like the generation of in and the current flowing zeitgeist. The fake notion that pedigrees are physical objects that you can apply somewhere in San Francisco and New York and say, I have here this piece of paper that says I have a master's degree in computer programming. Please hire me, YouTube. Please hire me, Google. It's not enough, because then there's things called nepotism. You didn't go to the same high school the Jewish guy did in Palo Alto. You didn't go to the same high school as that guy went to. So there goes your dreams of being a cartoonist or a basketball player. But obviously, if people were in power, they could make a rationally planned central economy to give you that job of cartooning and basketballing, right? But capitalism dictates the crazy notion that people determine supply and demand on their own free will, whatever comes about, So there is this suit and tie facade that if you're the manager of a McDonald's, you got to wear a suit and tie in order to say how supreme you are, even though all your underlings are poor African Americans, poor Black America that's running it. And, everyone's employer to employee, right? What the capitalism does is that funds money into the professional class to make the act, professionalism, a legitimate hierarchy. That, you are a journalist because you are hired by CNN, Fox News, Vice, TED Talks. They give you money so you can make videos on the history of chess. They give you money so during your spare time, which you could be doing unemployed, you're writing an article about the alt-right and then you'll get paid $1,000 afterward. It's a little ridiculous. These are jobs created up in an already chaotic existence environment. So again, these people, these professionals, quote unquote, get a paycheck every other week and just shut up. And they're allowed to do what you want off work. And that's why they have pen names and say racist things on Twitter. It's the great nihilism, the great schizophrenic state where our professional self is not the same as our authentic self. And we can't collide the two together because we'll be fired or something like that. So a professional, they must have authority because they are earning money. This guy who's teaching analytical philosophy at this community college, he's the only one that got the chair. There were probably 5 other people competing for it, but he is the supreme leader because this community college in Delaware is giving you the money, and now you can buy the house and have 3 kids with your Asian wife, you know? So I look upon this as the little microcosm of the capitalist system, outside of it as like hobbies and transactions. Think about all the hobbies we have when we're off this so-called work, right? The capitalist system in America is hostile to the ideological notion of work. Work is what animals do. Squirrels go looking for acorns. They're not suffering. Gibbons go out and eat bananas. They're not suffering. That's work. If you enjoy drawing or making music, that's work. It's not painful. The capitalist system in America has brainwashed people into thinking work is somehow painful. And so if you think of hobbies as a form of work, then you know that the system can make up anything and contribute to society, but there's only so limited plans that we as individuals, it's our fault that we can't find work. That, here's a job board, a public job board, and here it is, the cartooning position. Move to Los Angeles, apply. And then they say, we're not interested in you. Wait, that doesn't make any sense. You should be allowed that job. Why? Because you naturally like to be a cartoonist. I mean, you don't want to whore yourself and do hang tie on Twitter and then let dopes give you money for drawing nudies on the internet, right? But that's what mall cartoonists are doing. And that's showing the whoring nature of neoliberal capitalism. That ultimately, because there's no positions available, we have to whore ourselves to an already broken system, or else that we'll be kicked out of our own house out of survival or something like that. And so if you look at these hobbies, from knitting to sewing to chess, board games, dancing, outdoors, car racing, cheerleader, tennis, baseball, these are all work. These are all things humans enjoy. But yet, the system, we get access to these things when we have money. Here's an catch-22 ironic circle here, an Ouroboros, that we have to pay for the baseball bat and the baseball and the team. That these hobbies are basically transactions. We must ask what is real. That maybe academia, that taking a class on Nietzsche is a hobby and not something of intellectual and paternalism and spiritual growth, which for the last thousands of years made children into men and it was a transformation, a coming to age. Now you're all seeing this as this kind of great nihilism where everything is either you're ignorant, you're smart, Foucault's concept of power knowledge, whether you know it or not, and your own ignorance stops you from your own, I just didn't put in the effort to find the job listing in San Francisco and the ass kissing from making networking or something like that. So I just wanted to get across that intellectualism and paternalism is not a transaction or a pedigree which is given under capitalism. Capitalism has tried to co-opt intellectual and paternalism, and all of the middle class, according to work of Paul Fussell and Aaron Clarey, believe that getting their bachelor's in women's studies makes them a true woman, a true adult. That they must know everything about Andrea Dworkin and Camille Paglia, and then the whole world is fixed in this current circle jerk of enlightenment, like a virus you take. And really, it's just a brainwashing cargo cult. Right? And I also want to make this clear, also why academia is in decline, is because professionalism is also not intellectualism or paternalism. Just because some community college professor wears a suit and tie, it's their job, right? They're not acting as a father to a son or daughter. They are acting as an isolated, autonomized worker bee, and you, the consumer, are giving his money so he can bring his family to Disneyland in the next 3 months when summer happens, because teachers are inherently lazy because they get off June, July. I have to do this for a living, they all say, right? And so much of the middle class believes that wearing a suit and tie is somehow intellectual and paternalism, when really it's like Jeffrey Epstein level stuff. That ultimately it goes back to the Deleuzian schizophrenic between worker and authentic self, that we can't say racist things on Twitter. So academia is a hobby now, and there's a lot of things why academia is a hobby. And this is really sad because as a student, I went to academia thinking it would have its same hierarchical, loving meritocracy, but it's really corrupt and decadent because the very thing that transforms us, philosophy, anthropology, theology, humanities, path, that was always superior to this new 2-decade-old fad called STEM, right? STEM promises people so they can live nicely in a loft in Manhattan or San Francisco. That's not true. It's been all outsourced by robots, Chinese, and Indians. So the STEM fad is destroying intellectualism. People are not making programs and computers and new math formulas and reading the work of Frege, In The Math Myth by Andrew Hacker, he says that so much of the middle class, there's these fake now degrees called working in tech, quote unquote. And it's really just the liberal arts being transformed and destroyed through its own erasure to create this kind of what will sell. And you could be a flaming idiot and just be in jail for 4 years while they do an account siphon, taking your $80,000 a year. And what was it? It's just super senior high school level stuff. So eventually automation, computer automation, technology automation, if this STEM thing keeps going, will create this kind of Fusarian post-history. That this great erasure will happen, that smartphones will be everywhere, everybody's automated, we'll have our luxury, automative communism, quote unquote. And people are just don't know whether it's a capitalist system, a communist system, or some great oligarchs to Mulbug theory that rules over us. So this is some insidious decadent plan to live and burn out that the elite class would like to do, and we're nothing to them. I could best describe through a metaphor that starting in probably the 70s or the 80s, and with this accelerating technology and the death of academia, I can envision America as a cell system, kind of like China or Japan, and that we're really just all blood cells in existence. And the blood cell may go to point A to point B. It lives, it dies, but under like Foucaultian power knowledge that academia teaches us to enlighten us, it's not doing its job anymore. Academia is dependent upon capitalism, and academia wants us to have STEM jobs, wants us to keep making more blood cells, to use our money to stimulate the economy. So it's all just all these multiple transactions of existence of all these protagonists to an anime nobody's watching narratives. All this is going all on at once, and you're just the lonely blood cell, disgruntled, being highly intellectual, and stopping for a moment. That this great nihilism comes about. And you see that, if any sense, academia should help transform you to understand you could stop the cell system, stop this acceleration from happening. So our enlightenment turns to ignorance, and the cell system keeps going without us. That if I was to die tomorrow, the neighbors outside will still walk their corgi dog every day when I see them. How long have they been doing this? For 10 years, 20 years? That's 2 college bachelor degree 4-year educations. It seems like transformation or hierarchy doesn't change. It's just people exist. So we must ask that our own existence is fleeting to the Buddhist idea. That in such science fiction works like Flowers for Algernon by Daniel Keyes, the main character is an idiot, is retarded, and is abused by the system. Then on an experiment, he gains more smarter to the Foucaultian power knowledge. And then he becomes an intellect. He's a gamer like Rouge. He starts having sex and all that stuff. Understands what the world is, becomes so popular, and then only to know that he's dying, that you no longer have enlightenment. And you kind of die away, and it's this tragedy. Well, that's what the cell system and life as an intellect is. We start out as these kind of blank slates. We actually learn things from academia. And then when we see society ahead, it seems like we've been abused this entire time, that it was indeed this flowers for Algernon tragedy, and that the system is not rewarding us unless we do something, right, to transform or change or abolish capitalism for keep furthering the acceleration of the cell system. Because none of this matters, because people are fleeting. We're all just these ants in this E.O. Wilson type of sad, socially controlled behavior. So I must ask that, a quote by Karl Marx says, "The philosophers have only interpreted the world in various ways. The point, however, is to change it." And I'm one of those students now that has broken away from the academic system to enlighten you, the public, that they're up to their no good games as usual. And whether it's the money spent or the time you do, whether you have the money or you don't have the money, the point in being is that everyone is against us. And something, intellectualism and paternalism, as we can spiritually practice it as religious people or not, the system must be abolished. And radical change must happen in order for that. And so I remind everyone here is that academia won't help us. Whether you're like some leftoid cultural Marxist theory or Pomo-Semitic lover, all of this is just a big hobby. So much of academia is dependent upon capitalism that you can even say that postmodernity is a FBI, CIA, capitalist plant of sorts to promote American neoliberalism and such. And you really have to question this, and that the most hardcore intellectuals, paternal professors, are not as professional as you think they are, and they're actually intellectual, frank, and honest, and sincere, and change people's lives and turns kids into adults. And we're seeing less and less of that happen because all of it is just monies and transactions. So hopefully you can read some of those people and understand that, not every stupid leftoid who writes for Zero Books and Verso Books, you should take their authority because they have their PhD in political science or something goofy. It's a hobby for them, right? We're talking about radical change here. So, class dismissed, and thanks for listening.